Some of you are carrying silent burdens that nobody knows about. You smile in public while fighting private battles. You encourage others while secretly feeling exhausted yourself. But today you need to remember something powerful. God watches, God comforts, and God works. God watches over every detail of your life. He sees the tears you cry when nobody else is around. He sees the nights you stayed awake praying for answers. He sees the disappointment, the rejection, and the struggle you never explained to people. You may feel overlooked by the world, but heaven has not lost sight of you. God is paying attention to every moment of your journey. Sometimes people think silence means absence. But just because God is quiet does not mean he is gone. God often does his greatest work in hidden seasons. Seeds grow underground before they become visible above the surface. In the same way, God is developing strength, wisdom, and faith inside you before your breakthrough appears. There are seas on when life becomes heavy, seasons when your heart feels tired and your mind becomes filled with worry. But God is not only a God of power, he is also a God of comfort. He knows how to step into broken situations and bring peace that cannot be explained. God knows how to calm fear, remove confusion, and strengthen weak hearts. Some of you have been asking God, why is this taking so long? But delay does not mean denial. Sometimes God delays because he is protecting you from something you cannot yet see. Sometimes he delays because the blessing needs preparation before it arrives. God works with purpose, timing, and wisdom. You must stop judging your future by your current situation. What you see right now is not the full story. God is working behind doors you cannot open yourself. He is arranging opportunities, healing wounds, restoring relationships, and preparing answers before you even recognize them. The enemy wants you to become discouraged. Fear wants you to give up. Doubt wants you to stop praying. But faith says, even now, God is still working. Faith believes before evidence appears. Faith trusts before understanding arrives. Faith keeps walking even when the road feels uncertain. Remember this, your pain has purpose. Your waiting season has purpose. Your struggle is not wasted. God can use difficult seasons to build stronger character, deeper faith, and greater wisdom inside you. Sometimes the hardest seasons create the strongest people. Do not allow temporary trouble to make you forget eternal truth. God is still in control. He still opens impossible doors. He still performs miracles. He still restores broken lives. The same God who carried you before will carry you again. So today, stand firm. Pray again. Believe again. Hope again. Because God watches over you carefully, comforts you deeply, and works for you faithfully. And when the right moment comes, what God has prepared for you will be greater than the pain you experienced on the journey. There are moments in life when people feel invisible. You can sit in a crowded room and still feel alone. You can carry responsibilities, fight silent battles, and smile in front of everyone while your heart feels exhausted inside. Many people know your name, but very few understand your struggle. Sometimes it feels like nobody notices your pain, your sacrifices, or the pressure you carry every single day. But one truth remains constant through every season of life. God watches over what others ignore. God sees the hidden tears that never reach public attention. He sees the prayers whispered quietly at night when fear tries to take control of your mind. He sees the moments when you wanted to give up but kept going anyway. Human beings often judge by appearances, but God looks deeper than appearances. He sees the condition of the heart. He sees your sincerity, your effort, your endurance, and your faithfulness, even when nobody applauds you for it. There are people who feel forgotten because life did not turn out the way they expected. Some are carrying disappointment from unanswered prayers. Others are struggling with rejection, betrayal, loneliness, or emotional exhaustion. Sometimes the hardest pain is not physical pain, but the feeling that nobody understands what you are going through. Yet even in those moments, God watches carefully over every detail of your life. Nothing about your journey escapes his attention. Every challenge you face, every obstacle you overcome, and every burden you carry matters to him. God notices the tears that people dismiss. He notices the kindness you show when you are hurting yourself. He notices your obedience when temptation tries to pull you in the wrong direction. Heaven pays attention to the things the world often overlooks. Many people believe God only moves through big miracles and dramatic moments, but often God is working quietly in ordinary situations. He watches over small decisions, hidden sacrifices, and private moments. NTS of faith. When you choose integrity instead of compromise, God sees it. When you keep praying despite discouragement, God sees it. When you remain faithful during difficult seasons, God sees it. Your faithfulness is never wasted because God watches with purpose. Sometimes people become discouraged because they do not see immediate results. They wonder why their prayers seem delayed or why their struggles continue longer than expected. But God's timing is different from human timing. Just because something has not happened yet does not mean God is absent. Silence does not equal abandonment. Often God is doing deep work behind the scenes before visible change appears. Think about a seed planted in the ground. For a period of time, nothing appears on the surface. It may look like nothing is happening, but underneath the soil, roots are developing. Growth is taking place in hidden places before it becomes visible to the world. In the same way, God often develops strength, patience, ISDM and character inside people before he reveals the next season of their lives. There are seasons when you may question your worth because people fail to appreciate you. You may feel overlooked at work, ignored in relationships, or forgotten by people you helped in the past. But your value is not determined by human recognition. Your worth comes from the God who created you. And the God who created you has never stopped watching over you. God watches over your future even when you cannot see where your life is heading. He sees opportunities before they appear. He sees dangers before you recognize them. Sometimes closed doors are actually protection. Sometimes delays are preparation. Sometimes disappointment becomes redirection towards something greater than what you originally planned. Fear often whispers that you are alone, but God's presence remains constant even in difficult seasons. When life feels uncertain, God continues watching over your path. He knows every battle you ace before it even begins. He understands your weaknesses, your fears, and your worries, yet he still walks beside you with patience and mercy. You may not always understand what God is doing, but you can trust his vision because he sees what you cannot see. Human vision is limited to the present moment, but God sees the entire picture. He sees tomorrow while you are still worried about today. He sees victory while you are still facing struggle. He sees restoration while you are still dealing with brokenness. So when life becomes heavy and discouragement tries to enter your heart, remember this truth: you are not forgotten. Heaven is aware of your situation. God watches every step, every prayer, every sacrifice, and every moment of faith. Even when people overlook your pain, God never overlooks you. Life has a way of testing the strength of the human heart. There are seasons when everything feels stable and peaceful, but there are also seasons when pain arrives unexpectedly. Sometimes, the pain comes through loss. Sometimes it comes through disappointment, rejection, failure, betrayal, or emotional exhaustion. In those moments, people often feel isolated and overwhelmed. The weight of life becomes heavy, and the mind becomes filled with fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. Yet even in the middle of painful seasons, God remains close to the brokenhearted. God comforts people in ways the world cannot. Human comfort is often temporary. People may encourage you for a moment, but they cannot always heal the deep wounds inside your heart. Friends may care about you, but they do not always understand the full battle happening inside your mind. Sometimes people say the wrong things because they do not fully understand your pain. But God understands completely. He sees every hidden wound, every silent fear, and every emotional burden you carry. There are nights when people cry silently because they are tired of pretending to be strong. There are moments when someone feels emotionally drained from carrying responsibilities, disappointments, and pressure for too long. Some people smile publicly while privately struggling with discouragement. Yet God does not ignore hidden pain. He draws near to people during their weakest moments. God's comfort is not limited by circumstances. He can bring peace even while the storm is still happening. Many people think peace only comes after problems disappear, but true peace comes from knowing God remains present in the middle of difficulty. Circumstances may still feel uncertain, but God gives strength that allows people to keep moving forward despite the pressure around them. Sometimes God comforts people by reminding them they are not alone. Fear often convinces people that nobody cares and nobody understands, but God's presence changes everything. His presence gives hope to tired hearts and strength to weary minds. Even when answers have not arrived yet, His presence provides stability during unstable seasons. Pain H. As a way of changing people, difficult experiences can either make the heart bitter or make faith stronger. Some people allow disappointment to fill them with anger, fear, and hopelessness. But others discover that painful seasons become the place where they experience God's comfort most deeply. Sometimes people encounter God's peace most clearly when everything else around them feels uncertain. God knows how to heal emotional wounds that nobody else can see. Physical wounds are visible, but emotional pain often remains hidden. Some people are carrying pain from childhood experiences, broken relationships, rejection, failure, or betrayal. The wound may not be visible externally, but internally it affects confidence, peace, and joy. Yet God specializes in healing hearts that feel damaged and exhausted. There are moments when people pray and expect immediate change, but healing often happens gradually. God sometimes restores hearts step by step instead of instantly, just as physically Healing takes time. Emotional and spiritual healing can also require patience. During the process, God teaches people to depend on Him more deeply. He strengthens them little by little while leading them toward restoration. Many people think strength means never feeling weak or emotional, but real strength often appears when someone continues trusting God despite pain. Real faith is not pretending everything is perfect. Real faith is choosing to believe God remains faithful even during difficult moments. God does not reject people because they feel tired, discouraged, or overwhelmed. Instead, He invites weary people to come closer to Him. Sometimes God comforts people through unexpected ways. A quiet moment of prayer, a meaningful conversation, a scripture, a worship song, or even silence can suddenly bring peace to an anxious heart. God knows exactly what each person needs during painful seasons. He understands struggles that words cannot fully explain. The enemy wants pain to convince the people that their future is hopeless. Fear tries to convince people that nothing will improve, but God's comfort reminds people that difficult seasons are temporary. Pain may last for a season, but it does not define the rest of your life. God is still able to restore joy after sorrow, peace after confusion, and strength after weakness. There are people listening today who feel emotionally exhausted from carrying heavy burdens for too long. Some are tired of fighting silent battles. Some are struggling with disappointment because life did not go according to plan. Others are carrying wounds from betrayal, rejection, or loss. But God sees every burden, and He knows how to provide comfort that reaches deep into the soul. Even when circumstances remain difficult, God gives people the strength to continue moving forward. He provides peace that cannot always be explained logically. The world may not understand how someone remains strong during hardship, but that strength comes from God. As presence working inside them, God does not waste painful seasons. He often uses them to build stronger faith, deeper wisdom, greater compassion, and spiritual maturity. Some of the strongest people are those who survive difficult seasons by depending completely on God. The pain they experienced did not destroy them because God comforted them through every step of the journey. One of the hardest things for people to accept is that God can still be working even when nothing appears to be changing. Human nature wants immediate answers, visible progress, and quick solutions. People often feel comfortable when they can clearly see movement in their lives. But faith becomes difficult during seasons when prayers seem unanswered, doors remain closed, and circumstances refuse to improve. Yet some of God's greatest work happens behind the scenes where human eyes cannot see. There are moments when people pray for breakthrough, But instead of immediate change, they experience waiting. Waiting. G can test patience, emotions, and faith. During waiting seasons, the mind often becomes filled with questions. Why is this taking so long? Did God forget me? Why are others moving forward while I feel stuck? These thoughts can create discouragement if people focus only on what they can currently see. But God's activity is not limited to visible evidence. Just because something is happening slowly does not mean nothing is happening at all. A seed planted in the ground looks inactive from the surface, but underneath the soil, roots are developing. Growth is happening silently before it becomes visible publicly. In the same way, God often works in hidden places before breakthrough appears openly. He prepares people internally before changing situations externally. Many people want God to change their circumstances immediately, but sometimes God first works on the person before working on the problem. He develops patience, wisdom, maturity, discipline, and stronger faith during his dead-end seasons. The process may feel uncomfortable because growth often requires stretching beyond familiar comfort zones. But preparation is necessary for the future God is building. Sometimes closed doors frustrate people because they interpret rejection as failure. But not every closed door is punishment. Some closed doors are protection. God can see dangers, disappointments, and future problems that people cannot yet recognize. What feels like rejection today may actually be divine protection from pain tomorrow. God's vision is greater than human understanding. There are also times when delays are not denial, but preparation. Many people pray for opportunities, relationships, success, or greater responsibility without realizing that preparation must happen first. God understands timing better than human beings do. If blessings arrive before someone is spiritually, emotionally, or mentally prepared, the blessing itself can become overwhelming. So God often uses waiting seasons to prepare people for what they pray to receive. While people focus on visible situations, God is often arranging invisible details behind the scenes. He is aligning circumstances, opening opportunities, removing obstacles, connecting the right people, and positioning events according to his purpose. Even when life feels uncertain, God remains fully aware of every detail. Nothing surprises him, and nothing happens outside his understanding. Fear often enters during seasons of uncertainty. When people cannot see progress, fear whispers that nothing will ever change. Doubt says prayers are being ignored. Discouragement says the struggle will last forever. But faith believes God is still active even when evidence is limited. Faith trusts God's character more than temporary emotions. Some of the greatest testimonies come from seasons that once looked hopeless. Many people who experienced major breakthroughs first went through long periods of confusion, disappointment, or silence. Before resale, treatment came struggle. Before victory came hardship. Before open doors appeared, there were seasons of waiting. God often works quietly before he works publicly. Human beings usually focus on immediate comfort, but God focuses on long-term purpose. People want fast solutions, but God desires lasting transformation. Temporary success without spiritual growth can create pride, weakness, or instability. That is why God sometimes allows people to walk through challenging processes that strengthen character and deepen dependence on him. There are moments when people feel forgotten because life is not progressing according to their expectations. Watching others succeed while you remain in a waiting season can create frustration. But comparison becomes dangerous because every person's journey is different. God's timing for one person may not be the same for another. What matters is trusting that God understands the full picture even when people only see small pieces of it. Sometimes God will RKS through situations that initially appear negative. A disappointment may redirect someone toward a better opportunity. A delay may prevent a future mistake. A difficult season may develop strength that becomes necessary later in life. What people interpret as setbacks can become setups for something greater than they imagined. One reason God works behind the scenes is because faith grows strongest when people trust him without complete understanding. Anyone can believe when everything is clear and successful, But real faith continues believing during uncertainty. Trust becomes powerful when people keep moving forward even without visible answers. God is never inactive. Even during silence, he is present. Even during waiting, he is working. Even during confusion, he is guiding events according to his wisdom. What feels slow to human understanding is still part of God's perfect timing. The enemy wants people to quit during the process because he knows breakthrough often comes after. Persistence. Many people stop believing too early because they mistake silence for abandonment. But God has not stopped working simply because circumstances remain difficult. Invisible progress is still progress. There are seasons when nothing seems to make sense, but later people look back and realize God was arranging everything perfectly the entire time. The doors that closed protected them. The delays prepared them. The struggles strengthened them. The waiting refined them. And the breakthrough arrived exactly when they were ready to handle it. So even when life feels uncertain, continue trusting God's process. Continue praying when answers seem delayed. Continue believing when circumstances appear unchanged. Because behind every hidden season, God is still working with purpose, wisdom, and perfect timing. Fear is one of the greatest battles people face in life. It enters quietly through uncertainty, disappointment, failure, and difficult experiences. Fear tells people they are not strong enough, smart enough, or capable enough to overcome their situation. It whispers negative thoughts into the mind and slowly attempts to weaken confidence, peace, and faith. Fear focuses on problems while faith focuses on God. That is why every person eventually reaches a moment where they must decide whether they will trust their fears or trust God more than their feelings. Feelings are powerful, but feelings constantly change. Some days people feel hopeful and motivated, while other days they feel discouraged and exhausted. Emotions rise and fall depending on circumstances, opinions, and situations. If someone builds their life entirely on emotions, they will constantly feel unstable because emotions cannot always be trusted. There are moments when feelings say one thing while God's truth says something completely different. There are people who feel abandoned because life became difficult. Others feel defeated because prayers were delayed. Some feel hopeless because they experience failure or rejection. But feelings do not always reveal reality accurately. Just because someone feels alone does not mean God abandoned them. Just because someone feels weak does not mean they are without strength. Feelings may describe temporary emotions, but faith reminds people of eternal truth. Faith becomes most important during seasons when circumstances appear uncertain. Anyone can believe when life is comfortable and successful. But true faith appears when problems remain unresolved and people still choose to trust God anyway. Faith says, even if I do not understand this season, I still believe God is working. Faith says, even if the answer has not arrived yet, I will continue praying. Faith refuses to surrender to fear. The enemy often attacks the mind first because thoughts influence actions. Fear begins with negative thinking. Thoughts like nothing will change, I will never recover, or God forgot me slowly create discouragement. If fear controls the mind long enough, it can weaken confidence and destroy motivation. That is why people must guard what they allow to grow inside their thoughts. Many battles are won or lost in the mind before they appear in real life. A person who constantly believes defeat will eventually stop trying. A person who believes failure is permanent may stop pursuing purpose. But faith changes perspective. Faith reminds people that difficult seasons are temporary and that God remains greater than every challenge. There are moments when fear appears reasonable because circumstances look overwhelming. Bills increase, opportunities disappear, relationships break down, and unexpected problems arise. Human understanding naturally focuses on visible problems. But faith looks beyond current circumstances and remembers God's power. Faith believes that God can create opportunities where none appear visible. Faith believes that God can restore what seems broken. Faith believes that no situation is too difficult for our God. Sometimes people wait for fear to disappear before moving forward, but courage does not mean fear is absent. Courage means choosing to move forward despite fear. Faith is not pretending problems do not exist. Faith is trusting God while facing those problems. Strong faith is developed when people continue believing during uncomfortable seasons. Fear often pushes people toward quitting too early. It tells them the struggle will never end. It tells them change is impossible. But many breakthroughs happen after moments when people felt closest to giving up. Persistence becomes powerful because faith keeps people moving forward when emotions tell them to stop. There are people who allow one painful experience to define the rest of their lives. A failure convinces them they will always fail. A rejection convinces them they are not valuable. A disappointment convinces them their future is ruined. But God does not define people by temporary setbacks. God sees potential beyond present. Struggles. Faith also requires patience because not every answer comes immediately. Waiting seasons test whether people truly trust God's timing. Fear becomes louder during waiting because uncertainty creates anxiety. But faith learns to trust God even when answers are delayed. Delayed answers do not mean God is inactive. Often he is preparing something greater than what people currently understand. The world encourages people to depend completely on visible evidence, but faith operates differently. Faith believes before evidence appears. Faith trusts before results become visible. Faith continues walking forward even when the full path is unclear. This does not mean ignoring reality, it means refusing to allow fear to have the final word. God never promised life would be free from challenges, but he promised his presence would remain with people through those challenges. Fear says the storm will destroy you, but faith says God will carry you through it. Fear says you are too weak, but faith says God provides strength. Fear says your future is hopeless, but faith says God still has purpose for your life. Some of the strongest people are not those who never struggled with fear, but those who learned how to trust God despite fear. They chose faith repeatedly during difficult moments. They prayed when discouragement tried to silence them. They kept believing when circumstances looked impossible. Over time, their faith became stronger than their fear. Life will always contain uncertainty, but uncertainty does not remove God's authority. God remains in control even when situations feel unstable. His plans are not defeated by temporary struggles. That is why people must stop allowing emotions to control their spiritual confidence. Feelings change daily, but God's faithfulness never changes. When fear speaks loudly, faith must speak louder. When doubt appears, trust must rise higher. And when life feels uncertain, people must remember that God's promises remain steadfast. Longer than temporary emotions, visible problems, and fearful thoughts, many people secretly wonder if their best days are already behind them. Life has a way of creating disappointment, failure, heartbreak, and delay, and over time, those experiences can slowly weaken hope. Some people carry regret because of mistakes they made years ago. Others feel discouraged because dreams did not happen the way they expected. There are people who feel trapped by their current situation and believe nothing will ever improve. But one of the greatest truths people must remember is this: your story is not finished. As long as God still gives you breathe, he still has purpose for your life. Temporary seasons often convince people that permanent defeat has arrived. A difficult chapter makes people think the entire book is ruined. But one chapter does not define the entire story. Life contains moments of struggle, confusion, waiting, and pain. Yet God specializes in bringing restoration out of broken situation. Patience. He can take what feels damaged and create something meaningful from it. Many people in life allow past mistakes to control their future. Shame becomes a prison that keeps them emotionally stuck. They replay failures repeatedly in their minds and begin to believe they are disqualified from purpose, peace, or success. But God's mercy is greater than human failure. People may define you by your worst moments, but God sees beyond mistakes. He sees potential where others only see weakness. There are people who feel like they wasted years of their lives. Some wasted years in unhealthy relationships. Others wasted years trapped in fear, addiction, bitterness, or wrong decisions. But God is able to restore what feels lost. He can redeem painful experiences and use them to build wisdom, strength, and maturity. Nothing placed in God's hands is beyond restoration. Sometimes people become discouraged because their current situation does not match their expectations. They thought life without. Old moved faster. They expected prayers to be answered sooner. They imagined success would arrive more easily. When reality becomes difficult, disappointment can quietly grow inside the heart. But delays do not cancel God's purpose. A slower journey does not mean a failed journey. God often works through processes instead of instant results. Human beings want immediate transformation, but growth usually happens step by step. A strong foundation takes time to build. Character takes time to develop. Wisdom takes time to gain. The process may feel uncomfortable, but preparation is necessary for the future God intends to give. There are moments when life feels broken beyond repair. Relationships fall apart. Opportunities disappear. Plans collapse unexpectedly. In those seasons, people often believe their future has ended. But God is able to rebuild what seems impossible to restore. He can open doors that nobody else can open. He can create opportunities in places where people see only obstacles. Fear tries to convince people that their current struggle is permanent. It whispers that nothing will improve and that hope is pointless. But fear cannot predict the future. Only God holds the future completely in his hands. What looks impossible to human understanding remains possible with God. Some people are living in survival mode because life has exhausted them emotionally. They wake up carrying stress, pressure, disappointment, and uncertainty every single day. Over time, survival replaces expectation. They stop believing for greater things because pain trained them to expect disappointment. But God did not create people merely to survive life without hope. He created them with purpose, value, and destiny. One reason people lose hope is because they compare their journey with others. Social media, public success, and visible achievements can create frustration when someone feels behind in life. But comparison is dangerous because every person's story unfolds differently. Why? God's timing for your life is unique to your assignment and purpose. Just because someone else's breakthrough happened earlier does not mean your breakthrough will never come. There are seasons when God allows people to walk through difficulty because those seasons develop strength that comfort never could. Some of the strongest people are those who survive painful chapters without giving up on God. Their faith became deeper because struggle forced them to depend on him more completely. Your present condition is not the final chapter of your future. What you see today is only part of the story God is writing. Some of the greatest transformations happen after seasons that once looked hopeless. People who once felt broken become restored. People who once struggled become stronger. People who once felt rejected discover new purpose. God can turn setbacks into testimonies. He can use painful experiences to inspire, strengthen, and help others. Sometimes the very thing that almost destroyed a person becomes the thing that later gives them wisdom, compassion, and spiritual strength. The enemy wants people to quit before breakthrough arrives. Discouragement tells people to stop praying, stop believing, and stop hoping. But persistence matters because breakthrough often comes after seasons of endurance. Many people never see restoration because they stop believing too soon. Even when life feels uncertain, God is still writing your story carefully. Every delay, every lesson, every struggle, and every victory can become part of a greater purpose. What feels confusing now may make sense later. What feels painful now may eventually produce strength and wisdom. No matter how broken life appears, God still has the power to restore peace, renew hope, and create new beginnings. Your mistakes are not bigger than his mercy. Your failures are not stronger than his grace. Your struggles are not greater than his power. The story is not over because God is still working, restoring and still leading you toward a future greater than your current pain. There are seasons in life when people become spiritually exhausted because they have been fighting battles for too long. The pressure of daily struggles, disappointments, delays, and emotional pain can slowly drain energy from the heart. Many people continue functioning outwardly while privately feeling empty inside. They keep showing up for responsibilities, helping others, and pretending to be strong, but internally they feel tired of carrying the weight alone. In moments like these, people must remember that God not only watches and works, he also renews strength for those who continue trusting him. Human strength has limits. No matter how determined someone may be, there comes a point where mental, emotional, and physical exhaustion begin to appear. Stress affects thoughts. Fear affects decisions. Discouragement affects motivation. When people depend only on their own strength, eventually they feel overwhelmed by the pressures of life. But God never intended people to carry every burden alone. He invites people to depend on his strength instead of relying only on themselves. Many people believe strength means never feeling weak, but true strength often begins when someone honestly admits they need God's help. Pride tells people to handle everything alone, but humility allows people to seek God during difficult moments. Some of the strongest individuals are those who learn how to pray during pain, trust during uncertainty, and continue believing when life became difficult. There are people who feel exhausted because they expected life to be easier after praying. They assume faith would remove every struggle immediately. But faith does not mean challenges disappear instantly. Faith means God gives strength to continue through those challenges. Sometimes God changes the situation, and other times he strengthens the person inside the situation. Difficult seasons can either break people or build stronger character within them. Pressure reveals what exists inside the heart. Just as fire refines gold, difficult experiences often refine faith.